to Sudan, where the war has forced 100,000 people to flee over its borders. Fighting is now in its third week, and the sound of gunfire and explosions has not stopped despite another ceasefire deal. The UN is warning that the conflict risks morphing into a broader disaster as Sudan's impoverished neighbors deal with the refugee crunch, and fighting hampers aid deliveries in a nation where two-thirds of the people already rely on some outside assistance. Let's get the very latest now from Khartoum, where our reporter Naba Mohiedeen is. Naba, thank you so much for your time. Yesterday when we spoke, you were saying that aid agencies are starting to distribute aid, but under very tremendous and dangerous situation. So talk to us about what the very latest is, particularly as it relates to aid that needs to reach desperate people.
Yes, actually the situation remains the same. The roads are still unsafe and there is no humanitarian corridors despite the ceasefire. So it's really hard and nearly impossible for humanitarian aid to work directly to Khartoum. So right now there is plans that they will distribute all of the assistance in port of Sudan, very far eastern Sudan, which is the main port of the country, and then from that to other states, and maybe they will find a way to deliver the need to Khartoum. Since the war broke out almost 3 weeks right now, the first aid shipment arrived in the country, and it's not shipment, but we can say the first aid arrived just less than 2 days ago. The Red Cross delivered humanitarian aid assistance, medical equipment, and medicine for Sudan's hospitals to operate in the meantime. And there is other shipment by the UN just arrived in the regional water of Sudan. It's waiting to be docked in the port of Sudan, and it contains medicine, even fuel for the hospitals that works with generators, equipment for the hospitals, food, and life-saving necessities. So right now there is plans by the UN and other international aid organizations, but how to deliver those things to the capital, it is still unclear because the road is still unsafe and the airspace is still blocked, and the humanitarian corridors are still impossible to deliver anything inside the capital. But we are keeping our eyes on that, and we will keep you posted if anything changed in the next few days.
And now you say the roads are extremely dangerous, and one wonders how these 100,000 people managed, to flee Sudan. And we are now hearing the UN warning that up to at least 800,000 people could be, fleeing that country and going to other neighboring countries that are also struggling. Talk to us about that, and also, of course, other countries trying to evacuate their citizens.
Actually, most of the evacuation efforts were successfully done in the past few days, and there is almost very few people remaining in the country. The only exception right now is for some Arab nationals. They are living very critical situation, including Yemeni and Syrians. The Syrians refugees, they were refugees in Sudan, and right now they are facing logistical and papers issues with a lot of countries that they don't want to receive them. So their issue remains very challenging for them. But most of other foreign nationals, the evacuation efforts were successfully executed in the past few days, whether through the military airport in Durman, in the capital Khartoum, or in Port Sudan by sailing to Jeddah, and from Jeddah to their countries. Regarding the people of Sudan who are fleeing from the war zone Khartoum or fleeing from Al Junaina, West Darfur, it's really hard decision for them whether to stay or to leave. It's the lose-lose decision, but they are taking the risk by trying to flee because the situation in the capital is unbearable. There is a scarcity of food, medicine, services. The banks are closed. Electricity there is electricity outages for almost 20 hours every day. There is water shortages. So they are escaping this to undefined future. They don't know what they will face in the road. The trip itself is very expensive for people who are fleeing from Khartoum to other states. Sometimes it costs up to $1,000 for one person. Sometimes it's $500. It depends on the destination. So the situation is dire, but some people cannot stay in the capital, and they lost everything. So they are trying to have a new start or to find a new destination. It's a lose-lose situation. The situation is unsafe for anyone. But we are hopeful that the UN efforts to stop this chaotic war and mediation talks awaited in Jeddah will help relieve the situation.
And I was going to ask you about those interventions, Naba, in terms of what are the efforts, to try and stop this war from going on, because at this point in time, it does seem as if it is not going to cease anytime soon. So talk to us then about these two rival Sudanese military generals who seem to not want to engage in any talks at all.
Actually, there is conflicting news about that, and there is war of communiques. We don't know who has interest in ragging the war. We don't know who has interest in not stopping the escalation or to de-escalate the situation, because whenever the two generals or their media houses speak to the international community that they are accepting mediation efforts by international community, by IGAD, African leaders, or the UN, after just few hours, we always see new communiques saying they are rejecting it. But the UN political mission ended that conflicting news and said they already received two names from the two generals to represent them in the awaited peace talks in Jeddah, potentially in Jeddah. So the UN political mission in Sudan said the envoys were already named, despite the conflicting news of rejecting any efforts. This conflicting news, of course, it hampers or hinders any peace talks. It hinders any flicker of hope, but we are hopeful that with the pressure of the international community and the UN political mission, and with the willingness of Sudanese people, with pro-democracy groups and Sudanese political parties, that of course will lead to relief of the situation and will take the country out of the bottleneck.
Naba, thank you so much for that update. Let's leave it there for now. Naba Mohiedeen, our reporter, coming to us live there from Khartoum. And of course, this comes as the UN now fears that up to 800,000 people will flee Sudan. Of course, just going into other neighboring countries that are also experiencing some form of a disaster.